All right. Well, hello and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is none other than my good friend and yours, Pat Flynn. We haven't seen each other in ages. I mean, it must have been at least 24 hours, since the last time we hung out. But we decided that we are going to talk a little bit about the importance of challenges, short-term challenges, in order to build long-term consistency and how you can do it, the means by which you can turn something like this into, let's say, a 21, 28, 30-day fiasco into something that actually lasts much longer and has a long-reigning impact on your fitness. So
I love it. First off, let it be known that Alex was in Wisconsin just 24 hours ago. And me and my other friend Levi were like, man, how desperate is he? He just left and he's already asking me to podcast again. He's obsessed. He's obsessed.
No, the funny thing too is like we talked multiple times. This always happens. We talk like we should do a podcast,
Like
while
in
you're out.
person while you're out. And
Yeah.
we totally didn't. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. There's always seem to be other more pressing things to do, like going and getting, some high quality barbecue at a place that would rival any place in Texas, for instance.
Texas has nothing on Mission Barbecue.
That is correct. So if you're in Brookfield, Wisconsin, definitely check out Mission Barbecue. They are not a show sponsor, but they really should be because I'm giving them, all this free publicity.
Let it be known that Alex ordered 2 black plate specials while he was there.
Yeah, and the black plate special was
smoked ribeye, baby.
Yeah, ribeye. Yeah, it was so good. I was like, I need to get a second one, and I was planning ahead because I was like, I'm gonna need to eat something in the morning because I know that I'm gonna be racing around and I don't want to have to eat the sugar and carb laden food that they sell at the airport at an exorbitant price. So
that's a man who thinks ahead.
Yes, exactly. So I thought ahead, went ahead and got this nice ribeye. It was very, very tasty. So I can definitely recommend it to anybody who is interested. And there you have it. There you be.
There you have it. There you be. All right, challenges. Let's talk about fitness challenges. So I think this is a good topic. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I've found personally with challenges is that they are a lot more palatable to people on like a couple levels. And I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are because on the one hand, just as an example, I have a friend who sometime back, he put out like a 52-week program. So it's supposed to be like a whole year of training built out. And it sounds like a good idea, but I think that's really daunting for a lot of people. I think it's a lot easier for people to do something that doesn't require such a huge commitment, like 7 days, 14, 21, whatever it may be. What has your experience been with the use of challenges to get people to start training, but then also keep training?
Yeah, well, that's sort of the question. So, and it's a good one, good sir. So let me try to answer it. As well as I can. So, first, I like the a saying or a slogan, I guess. Very much. I try to use it as often as I can. That abuse does not negate proper use. Obviously, there's tons of gimmicks out there in the fitness industry, and there's tons of gimmicky challenges that I would not recommend to people. And one of the issues when it comes to fitness challenges, there's multiple issues that I just want to address up front. One is that they can often be just exceedingly unreasonable in terms of what they're demanding of people, just not intelligent programming. And it's not even so much about challenging somebody to kind of like expand their capacity. It's just beating people down, and it's unreasonable. And sometimes it's borderline unsafe. So that I'm not for. And the other, I think there's 2 dangers when it comes to challenges that you want to keep an eye out for. One is just the sheer unreasonableness of many of them out there. They're just not intelligently designed. And the other is that there might be the risk that if you get people in this sort of challenge mentality, that they just go from one challenge to another challenge to another challenge, and they never have any sort of cohesive long-term actual plan. They kind of just get in this. It's like program hopping, right? But just challenge hopping, and that's not great either. But again, I think abuse does not negate proper use. I've done and run many challenges myself for many, many years, to great effect, to tremendous success for so many people that follow me in my work. A lot of people probably know me for my 300 swings challenge. That has always been a very popular one that we run once or twice a year. I actually have another challenge called the Kettlebell 300 challenge, which is not the 300 swings challenge, but it does focus around that beautiful, perfect number 300, which we can talk about later, right? And I've done kettlebell complex challenges and pressing challenges and snatch challenges and stuff like that. So I think some of the potential upsides of challenges, before we get into details, are also many. And these also need to be considered before somebody sort of just dismisses challenges out of hand. They are attractive, right? People like exciting goals. Challenges often present exciting goals, and often time-bound exciting goals. They help paint a picture for somebody. Hey, over the next 21 days, here's what we're working towards, and this is an exciting goal. It attracts people, and often it gets them in the door, either online or in person. Alex, you know from being at the Dragon Gym, what often brought a lot of new people in were the different challenges that we would run. And these challenges were opportunities for people to come in and get started and get excited in a way that might not have otherwise occurred. And it brought, and also, this is the second benefit of challenges. They're extremely, or can be extremely, community building, community events. And again, this happened all the time in the Dragon Gym, still happens. There are opportunities to not just bring new people in, but to bind people together around a common goal, to build community, to build camaraderie, and to sort of build environmental structures and even friendships that can help push people long term. And also, challenges are a good way, I think, to see a sort of rush of results through strategic programming, sometimes intense, maybe even a bit of a strategic short-term overreach, which can be done, which can help build a lot of physiological and psychological momentum. And so long as that is done in an intelligent way, it should set somebody up for long-term success. And of course, that should be addressed early on of, hey, here's what, yes, this challenge is 21 days or 30 days or whatever. But right at the beginning, you we're making it clear that this is setting you up for your 90-year plan or whatever. We're not just going to be done after 21 days or just hop to another 21-day thing that's completely unrelated. This is meant to be a sort of surge or momentum boost or what have you into a much more cohesive program or plan. So I know I just said a lot of things out of my mouth. Alex, maybe you want to comment on some of them? Mm-hmm.
Well, I would be very happy to. One of the things that I like most about it, now you've hinted at this quite a bit too, is that it gets people in the door, and that's often what gets them to keep coming back. Because one of the mistakes that I think a lot of people make, I've seen this happen a ton, I'm sure you've seen it too, is I'll talk to people who are like, I'm really serious about getting in shape. I'm going to start going to the gym 5 days a week for an hour every day. I'm going to do it, nonstop. And, the reality is that would certainly get them fit if they could stick to it. But most people can't really stick to it. It makes more sense to be like, look, why don't you do something like you just commit to, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes a day, or, you just do this challenge. It's only going to be 14 days. So you just start with this and then see what happens. And so at the end of the 14 or 28 days or whatever it may be, they start to see some cool momentum and they start to see some great results. And that helps them get much more focused so that it's easier to agree to something long term. It's similar to like, let's say, dating versus marriage. Very few people can just meet somebody for the first time and then just be like, well, let's get married. You've got to go on a couple of dates first. You got to get to know each other first. And then after that, it's easier to ascertain if it's right to actually get married. And so I think that it's very, very similar with training, but people need to get those early results, that early momentum, and that makes it a lot easier for them to focus their efforts and decide which direction they want to go.
Yeah. Let me give another analogy. Alex, as you know, I am a part-time rock star. You know this. You've seen it. You've been to the rock shows.
Absolutely.
You've witnessed the glory. In fact, just this last weekend, you witnessed the glory on stage.
Absolutely.
And music, practicing music, getting good at a musical instrument, there's a lot of similarities, as you know, because you play bass, to getting in physical shape, right? There's often a lot of monotony. You have to have a lot of consistency. You have to be able to understand that you will hit plateaus in your progress, and you have to learn to work with plateaus and even sit in plateaus for a while. And eventually, if you're smart in your practice, you will advance beyond those plateaus. Like there's amazing similarities for people who don't play a musical instrument. I would suggest you actually take one up, because I think you can apply lessons from both fields that are mutually beneficial. But like anything else, I like a musical challenge every now and then. Why? Because it's helpful in many ways, but especially psychologically. It helps sort of get me reinvested in the musical project in a way that just going through and working my modes and scales and with the metronome, like, look, it gets a bit tedious and boring. And a lot of exercise programs, good ones, can and should be monotonous. to a large extent. They can be a little bit boring, even if you're still wholly invested in fitness, like, a lot of people are, and like I am wholly invested in music. Otherwise, the everyday practice routine can just be a little dry and boring. And sometimes you just want a little bit of a boost. So there's a challenge I'm doing right now on guitar. In fact, one of my favorite guitarists, people can check it out online, Nuno Betancourt from the band Extreme, hugely underappreciated band, put a challenge out on Instagram saying, I bet you can't play one of my solos. It's a really difficult solo. It's called Play With Me. So I'm like, you know what? I need a challenge right now. I'm still doing my normal practice routines, but you probably heard me practicing it. But I want to do this challenge, right? Which is not really directly related to everything else I'm doing, with the band I'm in and whatnot. But it's like, it's just energized me in a certain way. And of course, I'm practicing things that are related to this challenge that are super useful in general. And the amount of intensity I'm putting into this is certainly not the amount of intensity I would normally be putting in. But in the short term, it's going to be something that has already been highly, because it's made me focus and practice some things I haven't practiced in a while. And it has been quite challenging, but also there's sort of this spillover effect of the excitement that I've had of undertaking this challenge. And now that I've said it on the podcast, I guess I'll have to like put my put my actual video up, see where I get with this, put some skin in the game here. And that's another thing about challenges that are really cool. I think they allow people to really put some skin in the game. And part of that is that community investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're going to do a challenge, you should have some skin in the game. And maybe it's just what I'm doing now. Like, hey, I accept this challenge. So at this deadline, I think for me, it's like the first week of September, I got to post this guitar video, right? And hey, I've said it publicly now. So if I don't do it, then all your podcast listeners can shame me, and and I guess I deserve it at that point, right?
I will encourage them to do that.
But having skin in the game is really important. If somebody says, "Hey, I'm doing this challenge," friends, family, social media hold me accountable. That itself can be highly, highly motivating. And yeah, so that's another. So what's the point I'm trying to make aside from analogies to other areas of life? I find for myself personally, this isn't just for my clients, but for myself, I just need those occasional challenges to replenish my interest, to set my targets on like one very specific, exciting, concrete goal, that the pursuit of which will help me build a wider array of skills or habits or disciplines that will eventually spill over. Precisely because it motivates me and energizes me. And I think that that's the case with so many other people, even if they're already in the fitness habit, right? We talked about challenges bringing people in, but if people are already in the habit, I think you just need that occasional challenge to re-energize you, re-motivate you, and indeed maybe even just to help push you through that plateau, to have that period of strategic overreach. Because let's be honest, even if you have good fitness habits, it's pretty easy to get stuck in a rut right now.
Yeah.
And that's another use of challenges. They can be, I think, awesome plateau busters. They can help you reach to that next stage if you've kind of been where you are for a while. So
yeah, I think in particular, the people in our niche of the fitness industry understandably and justifiably place a high premium on skills and learning, really getting good at the basics, learning skills, putting in your time, doing the repetitions, as they like to say. But they also, I think, overlook the fact that now, as a fitness professional, you take it more seriously to a different level. But we didn't all start out like this. We ended up at such a position where we can kind of withstand some of, like what you pointed out, some of the boring, monotonous, repetitive stuff, the stuff that's very effective at getting you good at whatever skill you want to get good at. But for people who need like an on-ramp to being consistent enough, they need to first have some sort of sense of excitement, adventure, enjoyment, that sort of a thing. Like you mentioned as well, community, all of the other aspects that get people wanting to stay fit, that get them wanting to continue down the line. You can't start with the boring thing. You've got to start with a thing that is going to excite them and it's going to make them want to keep going and stick with it. And I think you see that it's done very well, very infrequently, I think, because like you said, people will either abuse it and they'll give people stuff that's just like borderline impossible to do, or at least with good, safe technique. Or they just won't do it at all. And they'll say, well, something, we're all adults here. We don't need these challenges. You shouldn't need to be motivated.
Right. So let's do 90 minutes of corrective exercises.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and you know what? Maybe that would help some people. Maybe that would help a lot of people. Let's just say that there's, let's just say results wise, there's no problem with it. But the problem is that if you can't stay consistent with it,
Mhm.
you're just not going to do it. I mean, I've had times where I've been very successful at certain things that I was failed at in the past simply because I did something in a way that made it a lot more interesting for me. So like,
Yes.
um, it, and even if I'm at like, we'll say like language learning, for example, there was a, last 2 years, I did a variety of short-term challenges to bring my Arabic up to a higher level. And there were at least 2 times in there where I just kind of phoned it in because even though I had everything right in front of me, I just didn't give myself the right mindset or enough enjoyment necessary to really dive in. And then there was one time specifically where I think I really hit a sweet spot and I got the best results possible. But it's because my approach to the challenge changed and it was something that was more enjoyable, that was more like fun and adventurous, as it were.
Yeah.
And so it works really with everything.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
especially
I just
important.
want to because that's a really good point. I mean, there's just this is something I wish more coaches would recognize is that when you're coaching people, you're coaching people, human beings, right? Which are irreducibly complex, especially in their psychology. So even if you have this wonderful program that's super ideal and would fix all people's issues, but it's like it's hella boring, right? Good luck with compliance, right? The vast majority of people are not going to stick with something like that. And I've seen
Mhm.
those programs, right? It's like, hey, on paper, this looks really good, but like people come in the gym and like they're bored to death with how this is done. Like you do have to try and make things a little bit more exciting. Now, on again, it's always trying to find that Aristotelian sweet spot between two extremes, right? There's the extreme of like, I don't care about the psychological element at all, right? I don't care how boring this is. I know this is good stuff. So that's what I'm going to do, right? That's problematic because again, if you have an ideal that has 0% stick rate, then it's not really doing it's not really ideal, right? The other extreme is the people who just care about all the sizzle and no steak, all about the shine and the excitement and the beat downs and the boot camps. And they just wind up not really doing people any ultimate good physiologically, even if they're constantly exciting them psychologically, right? So these
Mhm.
are like the two things we want to just avoid and see if we're doing see like a good challenge should meet in the middle, right? It's actually purposeful. It's physically purposeful, right? It's well designed. Yeah, it's intense. It's a challenge. You wouldn't call it a challenge if there aren't some element of intensity to it, but intensity's fine, right? We like intensity. It's just it's always the dose that matters, right? So it's intense, but it's purposeful. It's directed. It's ultimately going to be integrated with a larger plan, but it's also psychologically exciting. There is a concrete goal. Hey, for 30 days, we're going to do 300 swings a day, and we're going to do it in an intelligent way by tweaking the variables throughout. So that way, it's hard, but it's reasonable and it's doable. And this is, of course, like a metabolic conditioning and fat loss challenge. There's a nutrition component, and we're going to build that kettle booty and drop some pounds. Right? Awesome. Like very clear, very exciting, great community element. We can all do our swings together. A lot of skin in the game. So of course I'm being like very self-serving because that's one of my challenges, but I think it's been around for almost 10 years now. And people have done awesome with it. That I think we've really sort of achieved that sweet spot of something that recognizes that human element, that people want something exciting. They do want to feel like they've had a good workout, and we know that feelings are not everything. Feelings are not necessarily an indicator of a good workout, but we can have a good workout and have the feels too. Like to me, these things are not mutually exclusive, nor should they be.
Mhm.
And so a good challenge should always, I think, be a little bit of like wrapping the pill in bacon, right? And we know that analogy. Like, how do you get the dog to take its medicine? Well, you wrap it in bacon. It's giving people what they need, right? Definitely, but also understanding that they have certain wants too, and trying to combine them. That to me is the art of coaching. Not there's a lot of science to coaching, but there's also a definite art to coaching, and to me, that's what we're talking about right now. Mhm.
Yeah, that is, in my opinion, that's the missing link for a lot of coaches because even very good ones who, they dive really deep into the science, they know all the ins and outs and know everything that can work and everything that can't work, but the application of it is where the art comes in because number one, you have to keep in mind a couple of principles, and one of them is that consistency just trumps intensity. The more people stay consistent, even if it's not like, let's say, at 100% compliance. Let's say, I don't know, their program says they're supposed to do 5 sets of 5 reps and they only manage to get in 3 sets of 5, or they can only do 5 sets of 3, or whatever. It's better that they do that than that they do 0. And so, but a lot of people haven't internalized that yet. And so that's where the art comes in, is you have to tell them, no, it's okay if you do less, but do what you can, and we'll get back on the wagon whenever you can. So just show up, make sure that you're doing what's there to the best of your ability. And if you can get 5 by 5, that's optimal. If not, okay, well then you do whatever is something that you can manage on that day. And I think that the obsession with science and the science-based like phenomenon that's going on right now really just kind of overlooks the fact that, like you said, people are irreducibly complex, and you have to find a way that you can actually meet them where they are. And that's where the art of coaching comes in. And that is also where we can start using strategies like challenges that get people excited, that build in an element of community that makes them feel like they're a part of something greater, and that by the time they reach the end, they feel like they've really made a journey of sorts. Even if they're only working out every day in their living room, they feel like they've really made this amazing journey, and they're not the same person standing in the living room that they were 28 days ago or
Right.
what.
Yeah. So I think coaches should have a variety of different tools, and they should learn to use the best tool for what the job is, right? And sometimes the best tool for a particular job at a particular time is some sort of challenge. Not always. Again, if your solution to everything is a challenge, then you're just trying to solve every problem with a hammer, right? But not every problem is solvable by a hammer, and some problems are going to be made worse if you just try to use a hammer on it, right? But sometimes you just need to pound something with a hammer, right? Sometimes a challenge is super appropriate. So I just want to say maybe a few more things about like challenges in general. I think challenges should have elements of both demonstration and development. So this is something I try to pick out in general, especially when it comes to like exercise selection. So I think some exercises are good like demonstrations of ability, but not always like good developers of that ability, if you know what I'm talking about. I think challenges can be the same way. Sometimes a challenge can be like a good demonstration of the ability you already have, but it might not be the best way to develop the abilities you want, if that makes sense. So I'll throw an exercise under the bus, like the pistol squat, for example. I can do pretty much an unlimited number of pistol squats. It demonstrates something about my strength and mobility, but I did not develop that strength through pistol squats, right? Now, I'm not saying pistol squats are useless by any means, but there's other exercises like that, I think, that are better like demonstrations of things than they actually are developers of certain things. Even if they're not useless, I think there's better choices to develop the thing that you're demonstrating. So to me, when it comes to exercise selection or challenges, we want something that can both be demonstrative, like, oh, if you complete this challenge or you do this challenge at a certain level, like it really is demonstrating something like that. You have awesome work capacity, right? But along the way, it should also develop that thing that you want to demonstrate, if that makes sense, right? So those two things have to marry for me as well. Also, when it comes to challenges, I think specificity is key, and so is boundedness, time boundedness. I think challenges need to have a particular need. They need to be time bound. And I think generally they should be on the shorter end rather than the longer end, not just due to their intensity, but again, to that sort of initial psychological commitment. There's something about the ability to just commit to something for 21 days that is a lot seemingly more feasible to people than committing to something for 250 days, for example, right? So chunking it down, specificity, focusing on just one or two things at a time for a relatively short time period, long enough that you can actually get something meaningful done, but not so long that it's sort of going to be defeating of its own purpose, which is that to keep people in that sort of excited frame of mind, and then to ultimately point out beyond itself. So those are just a few, and there's lots of great examples out there of stuff that is not just my own. I'd be like Dan John, for example, great coach. I think he does challenges really well. He's got his 10,000 swing challenge, again, super specific, 10,000 clear target. I think it's about 30 days, which again is I think a perfectly reasonable amount of time to do a challenge. So yeah, just a few other things to keep in mind there. I don't know. What would you add to that, Alex?
I think that really settles it and it really covers it very well, because that is, again, when we're talking about keeping people focused, and I like what you said, pointing them outward to a different direction once they finish it. That's really what it's all about, because for most people, consistency is the hardest thing, and consistency, and part of that is because, like what we mentioned earlier, is that it's not always fun and exciting and what have you. And for a lot of people, that's kind of what they have to do, at least to get into a certain habit. I think it's much easier to convince people to do the thing that is boring and repetitive and monotonous later, once they've already seen results, and they can intellectualize the fact that, okay, because this got me such great results, and now if I'm even more focused on, let's say, my military press, and I do this program that has a lot of them, well, then I'm going to get a whole lot stronger, and that confidence that I built from this challenge that was maybe not specific to military presses or whatever, I'm going to get even more confident. And so they're able to focus on something that's monotonous and seemingly boring once they've internalized the value of what they're doing to begin with. And in order to do that, you've got to make it something that's daunting but doable, as I like to say,
Mm,
and short term enough where they don't feel like it's a huge commitment. It's
right.
just, a couple of days or a couple of weeks or whatever it may be. So, yeah, I think you summarized it very well.
Good. Well, let it be. Let it be done. Let it be written.
Let it be known. Now, you mentioned the Kettlebell 300 challenge, which is different from your 300 swings challenge.
That's
Now, I
right.
know you can't give away too much information, and I'm not going to ask you to, you know, spill the beans on everything, but what can people expect from the Kettlebell 300 challenge?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, kind sir. This is a challenge we are launching officially next week, but early registration is going on now if people are interested in hopping in. And as the name implies, it is a 300 challenge. And well, that doesn't imply much, because what the heck does that mean? Well, it means it's not the 300 swings challenge. So the 300 swings challenge is we just do 300 swings a day for 30 days. And we do it in all sorts of creative ways. But the Kettlebell 300 challenge is we have three primary training, count it, three primary training days per week. As my daughter Marin says, three primary training days per week.
Right.
And each of those primary training routines collects 300 total reps, but in different ways with different exercises. So we've got one, and they've all got awesome names, of course, like Kettlebell Gladiator and Kettlebell Spartan. One is quite high intense metabolic conditioning circuit, like a very extended circuit. So awesome for building capacity and endurance and just just general, like, lungs that don't quit type of stuff. Yeah. And it's absolutely miserable, of course, because it's like one gigantic extended kettlebell flow, if you will. So, but it ultimately adds up to 300 reps, right? So I always like these challenges where we have like some, like, I go back to music, like a pedal point, something that stays common while something changes over top of it. So the reps stay common, 300, but how we get there differs. So, sometimes it'll be this kind of long kettlebell flow, a bit lighter, more conditioning focus. Another day, it's going to be, more volume with more moderate weight, different exercise selection, and just collecting high quality strength and power reps over time, right? So it is a generalist challenge. You will have conditioning elements, strength elements, power elements, hypertrophy elements through those three primary training routines. Because it is 300 reps, it's just three primary workouts per week, done as Pat Flynn prescribes them, and then some auxiliary assignments in between, a lot of mobility stuff, walking. So you come out looking like an absolute Spartan warrior, of
Like a
course, which is
unit.
like like a total unit.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's it's gonna be sweet. It's gonna be intense. It's really something that I've developed for a long time. If you look through my old YouTube, I've always kind of played around with this 300 theme. I mean, I'm such a sucker for that stupid movie that came out
It's just so
so
good.
many years ago now, right? It's just like still still there. But trying to make it as purposeful as I actually can and get the results without the Photoshop. Although those guys were pretty jacked even pre-production, if you saw the
Yeah.
300 stuff, which was cool. So yeah, real functional ability, lean, useful muscle, intense but purposeful training, all done with kettlebells around getting 300, intense reps through three primary training days per week. That is what the Kettlebell 300 challenge is about. And if people want more details about that, I've got a very simple website to check it out. It's just chroniclesofstrength.com, which is my website, chroniclesofstrength.com/kettlebell 300. So that's chroniclesofstrength.com/kettlebell, and then the numbers 300, and that page will give you all the details about what the challenge is, and sign up if you want. Yeah.
Absolutely. And folks, I highly recommend it because Pat is a programming maestro, and I have no doubt this is going to be a very, very good program. I'm going to put a link in the description as well. So if you feel so inclined, I recommend that you get in sooner than later, because there is going to be a point at which it will no longer be available, correct? Or at least in the indeterminate future, it won't be available.
And you will have massive FOMO. You will just look back with such regret that you did not take advantage of this awesome opportunity. But seriously, this is big takeaway of this episode for me is like, do not dismiss challenges, but also do not abuse them. Find intelligent challenges. And one of the biggest benefits of challenge is not just the excitement and the results you get, but from the community. And we also have an awesome community, my Strong On community, and tons of people already ready and enrolled in this challenge. And so if you're looking for that community support and those sort of environmental structures to help you along the way, this challenge has that as well. So don't miss out on it.
Fantastic. Folks, check out the link in the description. Join sooner than later. And if you don't make the deadline, I don't know what to tell you. You got to listen to my podcast a little bit more frequently. So there you have it. There you be. Well, Pat, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, good sir. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure is mine. And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.